Hello, this is Ed in San Diego, California. Today is 4 June. The time here is 6:53 a.m. We're awaiting the arrival of our special guest today, Joseph McGuire, in Dublin, and some other guests will be joining us here in the global meeting room on Global Business News. And you see this global TV talk show. I love that logo. So great. Our special guest is very cool. Joseph McGuire, Face Facts. He's an author and he's an expert negotiator. And you're going to learn why and how in just a few minutes when we get underway. I'm on his LinkedIn page. Let me read this real quick. He helps leaders read the room, behavioral profiling, executive communications, and skills training, communication skills training. He, of course, is a keynote speaker. He's the author of the book, Face Facts, and the owner, CEO of Clear Sight Communications, and once again, based in Dublin. So I'm Ed Cohen, and you could reach me anytime by email using editor global business news at gmail.com. Or you could text or WhatsApp +1 if you're outside the US, 619-787-3100. We welcome feedback and feed forward, as Dr. Ken Lloyd says. So we're going to be right back with our show. Thank you for being our guest. Oh, here he comes. I'm going to open the show right now. Stand by. Good afternoon, my friend, Joseph. Oh, I cannot hear you. Put your sound on.
There
Oh,
we go.
how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's an early start for you, of course.
No, I've been up a couple hours now,
Oh wow.
and preparing.
Okay, that's dedication.
I was having a conversation with Gemini, and now I can't find the results of
Oh,
that conversation.
oh, I know that one. I know that one very well. Yeah.
I was reading it, and I was just loving all this information coming at me. And I have to tell you what it was about. And by the way, we are recording this. And so um, I didn't intend to. I was just going to read your LinkedIn bio as an intro and then pause. And there you were. So I told the audience, well, we're going live. Here we are.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah.
So I was reading your LinkedIn to the audience out there, and it says you're an expert in reading the room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
reading the room means looking at people's faces and how they are tuned in or tuned out at the moment.
Yeah, it's reading the faces, the body language, their facial expressions, and not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it, or what they're not saying, or even when they're not speaking up when they probably should.
Fascinating. We're going to be joined now by Andrea in
Oh, wonderful.
Bucharest.
Wonderful.
Hi, Andrea.
Hello, Andrea.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Good to see
Okay.
you.
So tell us what time it is in Bucharest.
Almost 5 p.m.
Okay. And here it's almost 7 a.m. in California and almost 3 p.m. in Dublin.
That's correct. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So welcome into what I affectionately call these days the global meeting room. And I spent a long time producing live meetings, getting on planes and staying in hotels. And but now at this age and spirit, this is the global meeting room for me. And my job now, and I have Gemini as a friend, and sometimes the others, uh, is to how to make it better. And uh, I had a glitch at a recent broadcast where the transcript was not the push. I didn't push the right button to get the transcript and the speaker notes done. And something went wrong with also the uploading or the displayed of some slides. So it was just a lot of talk, but fascinating.
Okay.
And then I just maybe 5 or 6 hours ago, I don't know, in the middle of my night, I had this brainstorm that, wait, we do audio also.
Yeah.
So I got up and I asked Gemini about how do I best describe or do more with audio. Um, and I got this long thing, and I hope I can find it again. I pushed copy on it, but I didn't save it somewhere yet. So I don't know. Andrea, do you use Gemini at all?
No, I don't. I'm a Claude fan.
How about you, Joseph?
Yeah, I started with ChatGPT, and then I gradually graduated to Gemini and to Claude. So I often start with the sort of just the very basic stuff with Chat, then I bring it to Gemini to upgrade it, and then I bring it to Claude to polish it.
And I've used Copilot, which is surprisingly really easy to use.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the TV show again. Your recent post on LinkedIn, Joseph, is just fascinating. Um, Andrea, I don't know whether you had a chance to look at it yet. Joseph, please tell the audience about the recent post and why it's so timely, and it really captured my imagination.
Well, thank you, Ed. Yes, it was a conversation I had with the CEO of a medical devices company. They're relatively new, but well, they were only a few years old. They were up and coming. They were growing, and they had invented this new device. And they were in negotiation with a large organization. I won't go into more specific detail than that about the organization, but they were in negotiation with a large organization. They were really excited about it. They knew this device had so much to offer to the market. And unfortunately, they blew the negotiation because they didn't prepare properly and they were so caught up in the excitement about the product and what it could do and what it could mean for them that they didn't take account of what the larger organization needed. And it's one of the, I'll be talking about it in a while, but it's one of the key elements that people don't necessarily, particularly up and coming organizations, growing organizations, dealing with larger ones, they don't prepare with the thoroughness they need to. And they think primarily about their own position, their own offering, and they don't really understand where the other team are coming from. And they assume that they're both on the same page, which is a grievous mistake.
Andrea, what's your take on this idea?
It's funny because I actually see this a lot in salespeople, not necessarily when it comes to the stage of the negotiation, but even in the beginning, because we see a tendency of them rushing into sales directly, which shouldn't be the case because you need to, as Joseph was saying, we need to understand what are the client's needs and combine our offer and customize it based on the client's needs. We can't really sell what we think it's appropriate, but we need to be careful with their needs.
Joseph?
Yeah, it's I mean I've made that mistake myself in earlier years. Um I'm not exactly a youngster anymore, but I've made the mistake and I've seen it so often, and it frustrates me, but it's also obviously central to my business in terms of helping people to get past that and helping people to prepare to avoid that kind of problem. But it's so essential that we actually seek to understand where the other people are coming from, where the other organizations coming from, and their perspective, and not to make any assumptions that what we have to offer, what we have to sell is of primary value to them. We cannot make that assumption, but we do.
So, Frith, uh, my recollection, and I read your article in detail a few days ago, and other things have clouded my head since. But I remember that the guys from the up and coming product uh, were so convinced and headstrong about what they needed to do. Your comment was, which I think you just alluded to, was that these other guys have their own needs and they're investing in other things, not just
Yeah.
that startup idea. Uh, and so I guess the guys from the um medical company didn't care about that came through. And so the guys who were what lawyers probably and experienced business people and pretty well off, they said, well, what about us? We have our own problems and we have to make this work for us.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
sounds so simple.
It sounds so simple, absolutely. But the thing is, we like to think that we are logical, you know, straight thinking beings, but we're actually governed by feeling. And once emotion comes into the room and the emotion gets heightened, and sometimes one team in a negotiation will deliberately push the buttons to ensure the other team loses their cool, or somebody on the other team loses their cool, becomes ungrounded, and becomes emotional. And when we become emotional in a situation like that, unless we can pull back very quickly, or unless somebody else on the team takes over, we can lose the negotiation. In some cases, we just make a bad deal. In some cases, the whole deal, the whole negotiation collapses. So the larger organization is primarily concerned about, can you deliver? Is this scalable? What are the timelines? And then the costs come into it.
Andrea, so I want to give the mic to you as we jump aside for a second and we'll get right back to Joseph. Tell us about your coaching right now. What are you into? What's important?
So um, I um, I mainly specialized in neuro leadership, and when I try to integrate the idea of um, the brain-based coaching methodology in my practice, is to mainly focus on how to how to escape fear, how to escape the feelings that are overwhelming, how to get our attention focused on the positive state. So everything that can be, taken towards the positive state. And I noticed that Joseph was saying very, very clearly that it can be that we are governed by feelings in these type of situations. And I believe that a negotiation is a very important topic. If you lose a contract, probably you can lose your job if you are that tight in your KPIs for your boss. But then I would be super curious, Joseph, from your experience, what do you see as the most concerning feeling in that scenario? I believe it's fear, but I might be wrong.
Fear so often governs behavior, period. And if you look at the research by Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, they talk about the fear of loss outweighing the prospect of gain. prospect theory. And the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, it says that it outweighs it 2 to 1, but apparently the research shows it actually outweighs it by 5 to 1. But the publishers thought that would be a bit too dramatic, so they asked them to bring it down to 2. But if the fear of loss outweighs the prospect of gain by a factor of 5 to 1, then we need to be very clear, very grounded, and very well prepared going into a negotiation, particularly if we're looking to sell something that's of huge importance to us, not just emotionally, but in terms of our future development. We need to be very, very clear, very calm, very grounded, very well prepared. Otherwise, in English, Andrew will get this one. In English sporting terms, we're on a sticky wicket.
Welcome, Andrew Elliman from England. And I'm really happy to have you back on the show. I think you already know Andrea.
Hi, Andrew. No,
Yeah.
we haven't
Hi,
met.
how are
Nice to
you?
meet you.
Andrea is in Bucharest, and she is a certified coach with by the ICF, International Coaching Federation, and uh, has been on our show a few times. Uh, Now, just tell Andrew, please, and the audience out there, about your specialty, your coaching specialty.
So again, nice to meet you, Andrew. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm specialized in neuro leadership, so I want to make the best out of the things that motivate the human brain. It can be different from one person to the other, but it's as I was saying previously, it's mainly focused on something that can give the towards state primarily focus rather than us being motivated by fear or focused on something that can be driven from the negative environment. Um, it might sound fancy, but I think it's the best way to compare it to maybe how children see things, because we know that I can maybe make this short parallel. We know that when we are young, we are either scared of the dark or fascinated by something that is colorful and light and it sounds joyful, and that's a good comparison between us being comfortable with being in the dark and seeing something that is maybe scary in the beginning, but it's about also us being focused on something that brings us joy and motivates us to become better or to change something and towards our objective, working towards our objective at the end.
So, thank you very much. By
Thank you.
way of introduction, Andrew Elliman and I have known each other a few years, and he has no fear. He just jumps in the English Channel and starts swimming, and he didn't know how to swim fairly recently to jumping in the English Channel. So he taught himself. So he has no fear. Or if he does, then he uses the challenge to
I think I think
put a blanket on fear, right?
I think Edwin, and thank you, Andrea. From what you said about fear, I have a very different view about fear. I think fear is something that's installed in us when we're children. And if you tell a child don't climb a tree, they'll always be scared of heights. Whereas I'm the other way. Let them go climb a tree. If they fall out and hurt themselves, they won't do it again. Like, to a degree, I don't mean go and climb the tallest tree, but fear is something that is definitely installed in us, and I know that myself from my own personal experiences, because my dad was a big fisherman, and he used to take me fishing when I was a child, and he used to always say, dangerous, water's dangerous. You fall in water, you're drowned. Like, you must learn to swim, and I never learned to swim, and that fear stayed with me right up to the age of 48. And like Edwin said, at the age of 48, I announced to the world that I was going to swim from England to France and swim the English Channel. And the first thing my wife said, but you can't swim. That's your biggest fear. And what I learned, and from what you were saying, Andrea, is what I learned from that was to swim to France. In my mind, I had to get fit, learn to swim, and overcome my fear of water. And then what I realized is because I gave myself a challenge to swim to France and I announced it to everyone on social media, my friends and everything, I had to put fear away over here and ignore the fear. And then I realized it was never about fear of the water. It was just the understanding of not knowing how to swim and what I was capable of. So I get what you're saying about fear, but I do believe that it's installed in us when we're at a very young age. And I think the biggest culprit of this are schools. And I know that's controversial, but when we go to school, we're conditioned to learn in a certain way. And if you don't fit into that way, I'm dyslexic, right? So when I was at school, I was put in the naughty class, not because I was naughty, but they didn't know what to do with me then. It wasn't really recognized being dyslexic, wasn't recognized. And yet I now head up a sales team right across Europe. And I found that dyslexia is probably my biggest superpower if I had one, because it allows me to multitask in my head when I'm in a room networking. I can be talking to you, but looking at what Joseph's doing behind you and listening in on that conversation at the same time. So I think it's fear. Fear is I think it's something that we make up to stop ourselves doing the things that we really want to do, right? And it happens to us all. It happens to us all. So I'll stop rambling anyway, but I hope that makes sense.
So one of the things that came to mind recently, as before you jumped on the show, Andrew, I was talking about a goof that I committed being a talk show host, and I forgot to push the button or something, but just started talking and just enjoyed the company. But some of the recordings, not on this show, but on something else, didn't get recorded. So not funny, but now it's funny. But and then it dawned on me just overnight, just a few hours ago, and somehow that was playing back in my head somewhere, that I have to do more with audio. I've done pretty good doing video and display comfort and welcoming, and because you're here, that means that I'm a success. So, but a lot of people don't like video because they're shy or they're not ready to be on camera or they don't want to bother to learn how to be camera ready or to communicate using video. But audio, you can drive, walk, exercise, and it's a voice going into somebody's head, and there's no other interruption. What do you think of that form of communication, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I did a podcast for a while, and when I did a podcast and I made sure I didn't have any screen time. I didn't want the screen because it was all about listening to me. And I had some really good conversations, but then I did realize afterwards that it's so important to see the face, if that makes sense. I think you can judge people by, or you'll know this, Joseph, like judging people by their reactions on the screen and what they do and how they act and what they scratch their ears and like, you know, you can learn a lot more. But I think that the only advice I ever give people is like, if you're going to go on a show or you're going to go, whether it's audio or whether it's a show like this, you need to treat it like you're sitting in a pub talking to your friend, and that way the conversation will flow. Like, don't be afraid that there could be an audience behind this watching this, like, because they're not when you're discussing like this. There's the four of us, so you have to put that out of your mind about the audience. But I do talks on stage as well, and that used to worry me when I first did that, because it's like, how's it going to go down on the audience? But I've learned that when you get on stage, again, you just be yourself, and you will pick up from the audience if they're engaging into it. You can definitely engage, and there's times when I'm very serious, and there's times I can actually play around. There's sometimes that audience, they're there for a little bit of waking up. They're also there for engaging. And I quite often will throw questions out to the audience to see what comes back. And that frightens people because you never know what's going to happen with the questions they're going to ask you. But I think that's a learning curve. When you have that, you've got to be resilient and know how to answer the question. But you can feed off of that as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeding off the other people in the room. So going back to your question, Edwin, about hearing, yes, I completely get what you're saying, and I think it definitely works. If I'm driving in the car, it's nice to listen to someone talking. I listen to a lot of talk radio. If you're running or you're doing some exercise, you can still listen to a podcast. You can listen to those shows. Shows like this, I normally sit down and watch a show right the way through, if I'm honest. I think with shows like this, need to keep them fairly short, punchy, and relevant. I think that's the main thing. But again, I'm rambling. I will talk forever, as you know.
Andreea, your world is basically one-on-one, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, yes. It can be. I mean, it's definitely not an audio thing, so I cannot rely only on audio. Exactly what Andrew was saying. It helps me a lot to see the face. It helps me a lot to really understand how the other people interact with what we are discussing. So it's not that I am so good at profiling and guessing people's feelings like Joseph, although that's super helpful, I believe. And I wish at some point maybe I can do that. But it's about seeing if the other person is engaged in the conversation, and you can actually see additional things from how they react. If they tend to get shy, or the opposite, they start to feel energized and you see the smile on their face, you can definitely take advantage of that moment and go deeper in the conversation. Maybe that's an insight and the client doesn't know about it. So it's our duty as coaches to pay attention to that. Yeah.
So, Joseph, you're a face facts author and negotiator. How do you use audio?
Audio is so important. It's so important. It's obviously hugely popular. Like you look at the popularity of Spotify, Audible, various other things, but the number of people who actually listen to video rather than watch, that's an interesting one because there's so many people who actually listen rather than watch. Partly because they shouldn't be actually watching anyway because they're in work, but there are other reasons as well. It's just a lot handier to listen. And when I think back to when I was a therapist, which is obviously quite a number of years ago, there was no internet, so people had to phone me to make an appointment. And how they spoke, not simply what they said, but how they spoke, told me a lot about them before I ever saw them. So I'm paying a lot of attention to not just what people say, but how they say it, the tone of voice, the sound of their voice, what's their breathing like, even as I'm listening to them. Is there hesitation? Are they speaking fast or slow? There's so many different variations there in how people speak that are so revealing, provide you so much potentially very useful information.
Andrew, what's going on in Europe from a business point of view? Are things, the war in Iran, the Middle East, is just impacting everything?
I think it's not just Europe. The whole world is impacted at the moment. in global mobility, yeah, I mean, you can't ship anything anywhere without an extra cost coming from here, there, a delay happening, knock-on effects, no containers, no ships. Ships are stuck in certain areas. You know, it's a nightmare, if I'm honest. It's not doom and gloom. I mean, we've been through things like this before, but yeah, business is quite slow for everyone. You know, if anyone says they're overworked, I think that can't be true, because it's not where it should be. But that doesn't mean we're not busy. Like, doesn't mean we're not busy. Going back to what you said just then, Joseph, actually, it did make me think, because when I was talking then with Andreea, and you're saying about face to face on screens, I think the whole world changed after the pandemic when we all got on screens, right? And people actually learn how to use a screen. And I picked up quite quickly that, you know, some people had no clue about etiquette on these screens, you know, sitting there like this, and you see their eyes doing this, they're still doing their emails, right? And how offensive that is. I also found people who switch their screens off and they talk to you with the screen off. I find that quite offensive. Unless the screen's not working or they don't have a camera, I find that quite offensive. But recently, I've gone back to old school of actually having face-to-face meetings with people in person. And I still can't believe how more productive that is than anything else. Like, there's so much more to get out of someone we can have this meeting here, and we all know, like, I know you, Joseph, like, and I've known you, Edwin, for a long time, and I met you once before, Andreea, but if we met in person, we would see a whole different person in front of us. Like, you know, you're all nice people, don't get me wrong, but I guarantee if we met in person, we would find those little nuggets of like what makes us so interesting. And I think that's missing at the moment. But going back to what you said, Joseph, about like people listening and the phone call, it did make me think, you know, if you're a blind person, you hear so much more than what we're saying now. Like, you take it in more. So
you recognize tone and
yeah,
stress.
yeah, I think you pick up on all that. I mean, I think blind people, like, it's not a hindrance to a degree. Okay, they can't see, don't get me wrong, but they learn in different ways that we will never pick up, because maybe we should go blindfold for a week and do all our meetings blindfolded, and then you would realize the things that are going on in the room a lot more. Maybe, I don't know. It's just something you said there, Joseph, on the phone, and you're right. On the phone, you can pick up the kind of person that's on the phone straight away.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Andreea?
Yes, I mean, I'm still a fan of seeing the face. I thinking about what you said about going blindfolded for 1 week, that would be probably a nightmare. If I think about, you know, just the idea that I need to do my job and then also have this barrier, then it's something that increases the stress level. And I don't know if I get that people that already have this started to have some.
What an experience it would be, though. I think, I think, you know, if we were to go blindfolded for a day, even
True.
just
Yeah.
to see, you know, because you're right. For us, we imagine that would be a nightmare because you've lost your sight. Some people don't have that option, right? So, let's put ourselves in their shoes and then see what's different. I think you'd be amazed what I would even go to. It's even giving me an idea to do it myself. It's like, you know, do a day where I go into London, but I'm blindfolded, and see how I get on. I mean, it could be dangerous, right? But at the same time, you start to realize the problems that they may have, but also you may realize there's a lot of things that you pick up on just walking down the street. You know?
Yeah, it's a friend of mine. He's Irish, but he's now living in Spain, and he is training for a triathlon. and he's blind. He's only got like
Fantastic.
3 or 5% sight. So he has to have people accompanying. If he's running, he has to be tethered to somebody. If
Yeah,
if he's cycling, it has to be on a tandem. If he's swimming long distance, he has to have a lead
a
where he's
guide.
attached to somebody as well. But he has done training where the coach didn't show up, and he's just gone swimming in the river by himself.
See what I
So
mean? The
like
senses he
it's
must
quite,
have
yeah.
must be phenomenal. They must be phenomenal. Um, the things that they're picking up on. You know, if you're running, can you imagine? Sorry, we're probably going completely off piste here, but if you're running and you're blind, you must be not just listening to. I mean, let's face it, I'm not a runner, but if you were racing now with eyesight, you'd be looking at the distance you've got to go, how far you've got to go. You'd see the person maybe coming up behind you. Take that vision away, you'll be listening to the heartbeat of that person coming towards you. You'll be listening
Yeah.
to the ground. You'll be listening to the wind. You would pick up on so many more senses that we forget to use because we're blessed to have eyesight. I, I I find it very interesting. I'm sorry, I've gone completely
No,
off the.
I want to ask you, Andrew, and we're going to get right back to Joseph here. Um, First of all, to the audience, Andrea, uh, Andrew climbs Mount Everest, uh, and do has there ever been a blind person climbing?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different people that have climbed
Hmm.
with no legs, no arms. I'm sure a blind person's been to the summit.
Hmm.
I, I'm sure there would have been for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating to think about all this. Back to the topic, Joseph. And I'm sure you're watching how we're reacting to all this impromptu stuff here. Do you want to tell us a story about what you're witnessing here?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I know we're on screen here, but I'll refer back to what Andrew was saying there a couple of minutes ago. I'm increasingly going back to in-person meeting, in-person networking, because it's so much more revealing, not just in terms of me observing people's body language and facial expressions and all of that, but in terms of the engagement. When we're meeting face to face, there's a there's a completely different experience there where we tend to be that bit more open, bit more relaxed, and people feel, rightly or wrongly, that they have a little bit more time, that they just reveal that a little bit more. Now, maybe it's partly because I just draw it out of people because that's what I do anyway, but I'm seeing it in others as well at the networking events I go to, and people are just that little bit more relaxed. It went for a while when we all had to go online, but it's certainly coming back now that people are relishing that thing of meeting in person. And when we're only seeing like the talking heads, as it were, when we're on screen like this, it provides me with a lot of information, but I can also see where now everybody here is in good form, everybody here is relaxed, but I can see like if we're in a Zoom room or just use that generic term, where there's 20 people on screen, I will know who's relaxed, who's stressed. I will get a good read on where they're at, but it's it makes such a difference when we have an environment where people can just, as it were, just breathe out and just be at ease. Now you're excellent at facilitating that, Ed. And I'm not just saying that to be nice. I'm just saying it as it's a simple statement of fact. You have a gift for that, which uh, is one reason why people come back. It's because you're so welcoming and because it is a friendly environment and people are not put on the spot in an uncomfortable way. But when we have that opportunity to meet in person, it just uplifts, it takes it to a whole other level once people are at least reasonably relaxed and open.
Joseph, what's going on in the negotiations between America and Iran? It sounds like it's an impossible task.
Um, okay, you're asking me to be very diplomatic here, Ed. Um,
And the
there's
whole
what we're
world is
told.
going to see this. So,
There's what we're told, and there's what's actually happening.
yeah, yeah.
And it's in many respects, it's clearly two immovable forces with Israel prodding away on the side. And Israel and Iran are sworn enemies anyway. We have President Trump, who, shall we say, likes to win. We have the Iranian hierarchy, who are, let's just say, very strong in their beliefs, very strong in their perspective on how things should be, within within the country, but also in their more local environment, countries and surrounding territories. So there's a lot that we are not being told. There's a lot we're not being shown, and both sides of the conflict, I could use another term there, but both sides of the conflict are very determined to have their way and to be seen as winners. And President Trump never, ever, never, ever admits to defeat. That's just not his way. So whatever results from it, he will claim it as a victory anyway. But the Iranians cannot be seen as having lost or having lost face. So one hopes for a resolution, a peaceful resolution, but watch this space, I guess.
So why would the Iranians or whoever they are launching missiles at Abu Dhabi? That's crazy. It's right there, and I
I
don't
I
get it.
I think it's quite clever, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. I think because Abu Dhabi don't see them as being the danger. Um, because they're targeting US based areas, they see that as this is brought on by the Americans. And that's how they see it. And listen, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, so I'm not taking sides. But if you take it from their point of view, yeah, they're bombing neighboring areas, but in an American area. So, or not just American, British areas everywhere, right? So I don't think the Arab world see it as a threat to them directly. They're very cautious of opening that can of worms because they don't want it on their doorsteps completely. So yeah. So I think it's quite a clever play from them. I think, and I'm not an expert. It's just what I see. Um, how Trump will deal with this from his side, like he has to play it very, very carefully as well, because there are other bodies looking at that area that will step in. You've got to be careful of China, you've got to be careful of Russia. So I think it's a big stalemate at the moment where they are. I don't know how you get around it, but yeah, I mean that's just my opinion. I mean I might be wrong. I don't know.
Well, the company that you work for is intimately impacted.
Yeah. We're in all those countries. So, our industry, not just our company, just the company I work for, our industry is in trouble there. Getting things in and out, forget it at the moment. Or if you are able to find some way of getting it in, it costs a fortune. And companies are like, how much? It's triple, if not quadruple the cost of getting things in and out. So yeah, so it's a difficult time. You have to be careful how you position yourselves. I think I have no clue how it's going to pan out. But both sides, and well, it's not just both sides. There's quite a few sides here, isn't there? But each one of them has to be very strategic in what they do next. And just like Joseph said, no one wants to be a loser in this game.
So the
I
Brits
just
have people in Dubai everywhere,
yeah,
and
everywhere,
and
everyone.
Americans too. But Are they getting? Are they evacuating?
No, Dubai is operating like normal. This is the thing that you're only seeing what we see on the news. And dare I say it? Dare I use the word fake news, right? But we're only seeing what they want us to see on the news. Like, I think what you need to do is switch the news off, or go to a channel that actually reports it as it is. I think Al Jazeera is one of the best channels you can watch for news, because they're not influenced by anyone else, you know. But I think listen, I didn't come on to talk about this because you can offend people very quickly, like, and I don't mean to offend anyone.
Neither do I, but
I don't blame anyone.
we have such an international mix here.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, it affects us all, right? It affects. Let's look at it another way, right? So everything that's happening in the Middle East at the moment, and in other places like, you know, Ukraine as well. Like, you'd like to think, again, don't take this the wrong way. You'd like to think, well, what's it got to do with me? We're miles away from it. Like, but you only have to look at the fuel. You only have to look at the price of living that's gone up. Your taxes are changing. Everything's changing, and it's all because of this war, right? Or these wars, I should say. And yeah, I mean, who knows where it's going to go? I mean, you flight days, you know, they're going to run out of fuel for airplane flights. You know, I mean, it's scary to a degree that we may be, you know, and on top of that, let's not forget climate change that's been pushed right to the back. But we're heading into the biggest heat storm that's coming this summer. I mean, it's going to change the crops, everything for everyone. So, you know, we're going to experience more floods. We're going to experience more drought. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, look at Kenya; it was flooded, right? I mean, Kenya was flooded. You know, it's the world's changing at a very rapid rate at the moment, and I don't know. I just feel sorry for the people on the ground in every country, because it's not them. It really isn't them. Whatever side you're on, and I'm not on any side except my own, it's the real people on the ground are the ones that are suffering. You know, all the politicians and leaders and all that. I think, you know, they've all got their reasons or egos, etc. But, you know, it's the real people on the ground that are suffering, and they wouldn't do. They just want a peaceful life in all countries. Anyway, I'm going to shut up.
and thank you so much, guys. And Andrea, I'm sorry. What's going on in Bucharest? Well, how's life? Normal?
As normal as possible, if I can say like that. And um, I can't help but, you know, notice that when it comes to these type of discussions, we tend to, again, maybe it's linked to my mindset on coaching, but it's linked mainly on finding a negative thought and then starting to build on it. And then suddenly you get to discuss about all sorts of generalities that are, of course, negative impacts on the global level now. So just take a moment to look back at the discussion, and that started from a question about, of course, Iran and what's happening, and then we ended up on a discussion about climate change and the impact at the global level. So this is the normal tendency of having something small slowly stumbling upon, like maybe a snowball. I'm sure you know about the snowball effect. And we start to have a clear overview of what's happening, again, at a global level in a negative way. On the other side, if you were to ask someone to do the same exercise on a positive topic, that would be harder to achieve. And of course, that would be something that takes a lot more energy and a lot more creativity to create. So let me just start by saying that, of course, putting aside everything that was discussed, because we do have impacts on fuel, we do have impacts on the cost of living now in Bucharest, in Romania, in Europe in general. But things are okay. And I might sound, I don't know, too optimistic for the current state, but I think it's worth discussing about the things that are also going okay, and the fact that we have a good start of the year, of the quarter, if not already. It's already half of the year that it's gone, and it's interesting to see how things will evolve for the remaining half. But at the same time, I keep my objectives in mind, and I can't help but ask, what do we need to improve or do to achieve something even greater for the remaining 6 months of the year? So, yeah, I guess it's going okay.
Thank you so much for your time here and being involved. Um, why don't you announce to the audience out there what your website is so people can find out more about you?
Well, thank you. So it's, of course, www.aspirecoach.org. It's Thank you for raising the question. It's something that I build on myself, so maybe it's not that professional that, like a web designer would normally do. It's something that I created as a hobby, and I started to learn things because I had to. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Joseph, back to you. I know your time is limited today, and thank you for your time and for spearheading this. I don't know if that's the right word here, but for leading the being the cause, the inspiration to me to put this thing together. And as you can see, it's unrehearsed. So I love doing this, Joseph. I learned so much from you. And that show that we did that you organized and I just executed it about the Golden Bridge, exit ramps, that kind of thing. That really comes to mind because of this discussion today. Would you like to just discuss and appeal to the audience in the next 5 minutes? Then we have to close. Uh, at what the Golden Bridge and the idea of exit ramps, uh, because everything that we've been discussing ad hoc here with impromptu, unrehearsed, unstructured, it's a huge risk. A lot of people don't like that. So thank you for participating, everybody. Joseph.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to see Andrea and Andrew also. So it's yeah, just great company. Um, yes, the idea of the Golden Bridge, it comes originally from the ancient Chinese military classic, The Art of War, the General Sun Tzu. And the philosophy there is always build a golden bridge on which your enemies can retreat. And it seems to me, given what we've just been discussing, that that's what's needed now is a golden bridge where the antagonistic forces can find a common resolution, common agreement for whatever and however they manage to do it to allow each other to retreat gracefully. And it's something that for me is core to my, if you like, my life philosophy, that rather than getting into disagreements with people, I'd rather have an open conversation. It doesn't mean we're necessarily, particularly when there's a lot of heightened emotion, it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to agree on everything. We may agree on 20%, 40%, whatever it might be, but that we can allow each other to move back or move forward gracefully without holding, whether it's emotional weapons or physical weapons, over each other's head, and recognize that we've approached it with a degree of openness. We've approached the conversation, the debate, the negotiation with a degree of curiosity, which to me is an essential part of learning. And it's part of it's part of the, we touched on it at the beginning of the conversation, but In any significant conversation, the preparation part is so, so vital. And the preparation part is not just the details of the conversation. The preparation involves our internal state, but it also involves understanding the perspective of the other person or the other party. And when we do that, we're at least creating the possibility for that golden bridge to appear and to take effect, as long as we're willing to do that.
Andrea, would you like to comment?
Um, I remember the moment when we defined clearly that when it comes to a negotiation, it's not necessarily about how the other sees winning. So we spoke about um, what means for me to win doesn't necessarily can mean the same thing for you, and even thinking about being defeated. So we need to be careful on, as Joseph was saying, on the preparation stage, to try to do our homework, maybe even thinking about the other party. So to try to research, to try to think about what's important for them from the very beginning and maybe look for clues on that direction, or who knows, maybe we can find something that derails from our initial assumption. But I think that, again, as we were concluding last time, a negotiation can end with a win-win that may not look like that. We escaped and used the golden bridge. We got what we wanted. The other person is happy as well. So of course it's a win-win. We wanted to keep the relationship and we wanted to build that golden bridge. So the task was achieved.
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah, so yeah, I completely agree with you, Joseph. It's definitely it's better to listen and try to understand what's happening from the other side and why they've got that side. Yeah, I think arguments never lead to anywhere, so you need to make sure you step out of an argument, remove yourself from the situation sometimes, because it's easier to walk away than say something that you'll regret for the rest of your life. That's the easiest thing. But also, I think in a negotiation stage, I'm a great believer. I work in sales, so I only believe sales. Sales to me is only when you're in front of someone. Like when I'm talking to someone, that's sales. I do preparation beforehand. I do research on the company. I do the follow-ups and all that. That is not sales to me. That is not sales. Sales is this. And there was a study done at Harvard I saw on a media site where a guy had said about sales, and he was talking about this, is when you're in front of someone, that's when you sell. It's like stepping in that old saying, you step in an elevator, you've got till the elevator gets out in front of that person to sell. And he said, so he did a study. They did a study at Harvard. There was a study done with about 100 different salespeople across America, and it worked out that most salespeople only do 1 hour and 30 minutes of sales a day, right? And everyone said, no. And he said, no, face to face, in front of someone or on the phone, that is sales. All the rest is just prep. All the rest is just thing. So a company went to him, I think it was Xerox actually, don't quote me on that, but I think it was Xerox. They went to them and said, last 5 years, our sales has gone down and down and down and down and down, right? And we're not making any money, so we're going to have to lay people off. And his answer was, that's because your salespeople are only doing 90 minutes of sales a day. And he said, no, they can't be. So they did a study over a month, and then they realized they were averaging 90 minutes a day. So he said, if you can increase that to 3 hours a day and get everyone to do 3 hours, watch your sales. The following year, they had the highest selling rate in a year than they had in the last 5 years, because they changed their mindset and they won more sales. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. I mean, that's how I see sales.
That's a positive thing and instructive. Thank you. Maybe we're going to end this now and go forward with our heads held high. And please come back. Let's do it again.
Thank
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 you
you
all.
for having the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you, Andreea. I learn from you every time you're on.
Thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
You make this work. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.